Hello and welcome. I am so glad you are here because what I'm about to share with you is something I spent most of my life wishing someone had told me sooner. I am 72 years old, and for the better part of 5 decades, I kept a home the way I was taught to keep one: full, layered, abundant. Every shelf held something. Every surface carried meaning. Every closet was packed with the accumulated evidence of a long, busy life. I was proud of it, honestly. It felt like proof. Proof that I had lived, that I had gathered, that I had built something real. And then my son married Yuki. Yuki grew up in Osaka, Japan, the daughter of a woman who believed that a home should never hold more than it could breathe with. She was 34 when she became my daughter-in-law, and the first time she walked slowly through my house, I watched her face carefully. She was not critical. She was not rude. She simply moved through each room with a kind of quiet attention, touching nothing, saying nothing. And when she reached the kitchen, she paused at the counter and said, very gently, "There is so much here." Not as a judgment, as an observation. And something in the way she said it made me look at my own kitchen, as if I was seeing it for the very first time. Over the following years, Yuki shared with me the habits that shaped her relationship with her home. Not in lectures, not in lists, but in small moments. In the way she moved through a room when she visited. In the questions she asked when we talked about our homes. In the things she did and the things she quietly chose not to do. I watched, I listened, and piece by piece, over more than a decade, I built a completely different home. Not emptier, not barer, just quieter. Just clearer, just mine, in a way it had never been before. Today, I want to share every single one of those habits with you. The first habit is the one that took me the longest to truly understand, and it is this: empty space is not wasted space. In my home before Yuki, if a shelf was clear, I treated it like an invitation to fill it. A blank wall felt like an apology. A bare counter felt like evidence that something was missing. But Yuki introduced me to a Japanese concept she called ma, which means intentional pause. The breathing room between things that allows each thing to be fully felt. She explained it to me one afternoon by pointing to a narrow shelf in my living room that was crowded with small figurines and framed photos layered 2 rows deep. She asked me if I could tell her what was on that shelf without looking at it. I could not. She said, "That means the shelf is too busy to be seen." She helped me clear everything off, wipe it down, and leave it bare. I felt almost anxious looking at it for the first 2 days. Then on the 3rd morning, the early light came through the window and lay across that empty shelf in a long stripe of gold. And I stood there for a moment, just looking at it. And something in me was perfectly still. I have kept at least one deliberately empty surface in every room of my home ever since. Those spaces are the quietest, most restful things I own. The second habit changed the way I part with things, which for most of my life I had been doing entirely wrong. I did not realize how much guilt I carried into every decluttering session until Yuki showed me a different way. She was helping me sort through a closet one afternoon when she picked up an old cardigan I had not worn in years, my late mother's cardigan, kept not because I wore it, but because I could not bring myself to let it go. I was already tensing up, already preparing for the guilt of releasing it, when Yuki held it gently and said, "Thank it before you let it go." She explained that in Japanese homes, objects are not simply discarded. They're honored for what they gave, and then released with gratitude rather than guilt. She placed the cardigan in my hands and asked me what it had meant to me. I held it and remembered my mother wearing it on cold Sunday mornings. I thanked it for that memory, quietly, in my own way. And then I folded it carefully and placed it in the donation box. I did not feel guilt. I felt something closer to tenderness. I have used this practice every time I let something go ever since, and it has made the releasing not just easier, but genuinely peaceful. The guilt was never about the object. It was about the parting, and gratitude transforms the parting completely. The third habit is a practical one, and it transformed every drawer and cabinet in my home in a single weekend without my needing to throw a single thing away. Yuki calls it vertical thinking. When she opened my dresser drawers during one of her visits and saw everything stacked in flat, heavy piles, she said simply, "You cannot see what you have." She showed me how to fold each garment smaller and stand it upright in the drawer, side by side, like pages in a book on a shelf. Every item visible at a single glance. No digging, no shifting, no disturbing one thing to reach another. She did the same with my kitchen drawers, utensils stored upright in small containers, and with my linen cabinet, where towels were tucked side by side instead of stacked in a column that toppled every time I pulled from the middle. The first morning I opened my clothing drawer and could see every single item at once without touching anything, I felt a ridiculous wave of pleasure. For those of us who find bending and digging uncomfortable, this habit is not just calming, it is genuinely kind to our bodies. Nothing is hidden, nothing is buried, everything simply waits, visible and ready. The fourth habit is one that I resisted for longer than I should have, because it sounded like a restriction, and I have always disliked restrictions. But Yuki framed it differently. She said, "When something new comes in, something that has finished its work can finally go. One in, one out. Not as a rule, but as a rhythm. Every time a new item enters your home, you find the item that has quietly completed its purpose, and you release it with gratitude. The result is that your home never accumulates without noticing. Nothing sneaks in and takes root while you're not paying attention." The first time I truly lived by this habit was when I bought a new set of kitchen towels. I stood in the kitchen afterward and looked at my drawer of old ones for the first time in years, and I saw how many were stained, worn through at the hem, kept only out of habit rather than use. I let go of 8 of them without a moment of conflict. This habit is not about having less. It is about staying awake to what you already have. The 5th habit is perhaps the most meditative of all 10, and it is this: let your objects speak to you and listen to what they say. Yuki does not move through her home as though it is a place to be managed. She moves through it the way you might walk through a garden, noticing, attending, allowing each thing to be seen. She taught me to ask a single question of every object I encountered during my slow morning walks through my home. Does this still belong to who I am today? Not who I was 30 years ago, not who I was when this item was given to me, today. Some things said yes clearly and immediately. Others, and this surprised me, had gone quiet. A vase I passed every day without ever really seeing. A stack of decorative plates I had not used in a decade. Objects that had once been full of meaning, but had slowly become invisible, which meant they had become something else entirely. Background noise. Releasing them was not sad. It was like turning off a sound I had stopped consciously hearing, but that had been running in the background of my peace the entire time. The sixth habit is a morning ritual that I now consider as essential as my cup of coffee, and it costs nothing and takes 5 minutes. Every morning, before anything else, I tend to one small surface in my home. One counter, one corner table, one section of the bathroom shelf, a wipe, a gentle straightening, a small act of care. Yuki introduced me to this practice, which comes from a Japanese tradition of daily cleaning as respect rather than obligation. Not cleaning because things have become dirty, cleaning as a way of saying, I see this space, I value it, I am present in it. What I discovered when I adopted this habit is that it changed the emotional tone of my entire morning. There's something about beginning a day with one quiet, purposeful act of care, one surface tended, one corner honored, that settles everything that comes after it. My home stopped feeling like something that was getting away from me. It became something I was in relationship with. And that relationship, as Yuki once told me with a small smile, is the whole point. The seventh habit was the one that gave my home back the experience of time. And I did not realize how much I had missed that until it returned. Yuki changes her home gently with the seasons, not by decorating, not by buying new things, but by thoughtfully rotating what she already owns in rhythm with the year. In spring, heavy throws are folded away and lighter fabrics come out. A small vase with a single blooming branch appears in the entryway. Summer lets the light in through thinner curtains, and the surfaces hold less. Autumn welcomes warmer textures, a candle, dried flowers near the kitchen. Winter deepens the colors and the warmth and the sense of quiet enclosure. None of this costs anything. None of it is dramatic. But the effect is that our home feels alive in a way that most homes do not. It moves with the world outside. When I began doing the same in my own small way, just changing the throw blanket on my sofa, just rotating which candles sat on the mantel, I noticed that I stopped feeling as though time was standing still inside my house. I began to feel that I was moving with the year instead of watching it pass from a static room. At 72, that feeling matters more than I can fully say. The eighth habit saved me from the particular kind of exhaustion that comes from organizing in the wrong direction. For most of my life, when I decided to tackle clutter, I would choose a room and attempt to fix it from wall to wall. I would end up confused halfway through, surrounded by piles from multiple categories, unable to make a single clean decision, and I would give up and put everything back approximately where it had been. Yuki showed me a completely different method. Declutter by category, not by room. Gather every item of one type from every corner of your home and sort through the entire collection in one sitting. Clothing first. Every garment from every closet, every bedroom, every hanger and drawer, laid out together as a complete picture. Then books. then papers, then miscellaneous items. Sentimental objects always last when your confidence is already built. The difference this makes is profound. You can see the full scope of what you own in that category. You make one kind of decision at a time, without your mind jumping between the sweater on the chair and the paperwork on the desk and the tool in the wrong drawer. The focus is clean, the momentum is real, and the progress you feel when one category is truly complete carries you forward into the next. The 9th habit gave my home a center, a place of stillness that quietly changed the feeling of every room around it. Yuki introduced me to the Japanese tradition of the tokonoma, a small, carefully chosen space that holds only one or two objects of deep personal meaning. Not decoration, not display, stillness. A place where the eye can rest without being directed or impressed or entertained. Just a single object, chosen with great care, in a clean and quiet space. I found my tokonoma on the narrow shelf beside my reading chair. I cleared everything from it and placed there only two things: a small clay pot that my daughter made in her high school art class 30 years ago, and a single photograph of the view from my parents' kitchen window, taken on a summer morning when I was 9 years old. That shelf, with those two things on it, changed the energy of my entire living room. Guests always pause near it. They do not always know why. Something quiet and alive lives in that space, and it speaks without words. When everything in your home demands equal attention, nothing is truly seen. When you give one thing the gift of stillness and space, it becomes visible in a way nothing surrounded by clutter can ever be. The 10th habit is the one that changed not just my home, but my understanding of why any of this matters. Yuki told me once, during a long afternoon when we were sorting through a cabinet together, that decluttering is not about having a tidy house. It is about respecting yourself enough to live in a space that supports you instead of draining you. She said, "The way we care for our homes is the way we care for ourselves." When I heard that, something shifted deep in my thinking about the connection between my surroundings and my daily sense of peace. I had spent decades managing my clutter, working around it, apologizing for it internally every time I walked past a corner that felt heavy or a drawer that made me tense. I had not understood that those small daily frictions were adding up to something, that they were a form of quiet, continuous emotional weight. Releasing them was not just about having a nicer home. It was about reclaiming the ease and the clarity that had been quietly spent on managing excess for years. At 72, I am done spending my energy on things that do not support the life I am still very much living. My home now reflects who I am today, not who I was, not what I accumulated, not what I thought I should hold on to. Just me, now, in a space that asks nothing of me, except that I tend to it gently. I want to close by asking you something, and I mean this sincerely. What is one corner of your home that you walk past every day and feel a small flicker of something uncomfortable? Not guilt exactly, just a kind of weight. A drawer you do not quite want to open, a shelf you have stopped seeing because seeing it costs something, a closet you close quickly because the inside of it feels like a problem you've been postponing. I would love for you to write about it in the comments. Not to be fixed, not to be advised, just to name it. Because in my experience, the first act of decluttering is always the same. You stop pretending you do not notice. You look at the thing directly and you say quietly, I see you. And from that moment, everything becomes possible. Tell me in the comments which of these 10 habits feels most like something you've been waiting for without knowing it. Your words might be exactly what someone else sitting quietly on the other side of this screen needs to hear today. Because none of us does this alone. And in this particular kind of work, knowing someone else is beginning at the same time as you makes all the difference.